Hi, welcome to Let's Talk Seniors, Memory Care Issues, Dementia, Alzheimer's, and Parkinson's. I'm Deirdre Verbo, your host and owner of Just Like Home, where we have 2 memory care homes in Shelton for seniors with memory care. At Let's Talk Seniors, our goal is to bring you information on seniors, whether you are caring for a loved one or you find yourself aging and have a lot of questions. We are here for you. Today's guest, Tamath Rossi, founded a company called Supporting Our Seniors less than 2 years ago, but she has plenty of experience in this world. She has spent 2 decades in the senior service industry as an advocate, forming strong relationships with the area healthcare community to help with resources, as well as having an understanding and compassion to provide a solid support system to clients and their families as they navigate through the many transitions and evolutions of the aging process. Supporting Our Seniors is a multifaceted and comprehensive service that extends well beyond basic assistance and possible placement in appropriate facilities or bringing services to the client's home. Tamath has 30 years experience as a paralegal. She has a vast network of attorney colleagues representing various areas of experience, practice to recommend good matches to her clients. You may know Tamath if you live in Southbury. She served as the Director of Senior Services and was a municipal veteran representative. She is also a certified dementia practitioner, a daily money manager, a member of the American Association of Daily Money Managers. With her background, she can recognize and diagnose and inform the family of the onset of cognitive issues with a loved one, provide support in the assessment and continuing life assessment, including recommendations and coordination of support and services. She can also provide long-term and ongoing support to seniors and their families. Oh my gosh, if that is not impressive enough, on a personal note, Tamath is a mom of 3, and she's an active military mom. She personally lives with the effects of Alzheimer's and dementia with her own mother-in-law, and she has competed in many Ironman events. So powerhouse, pretty sure describes this woman we're about to meet now. So Miss Tamath Rossi, thank you so much for joining us. And I don't know how you fit us in between your, 1,700 things you're doing today, but thank you so much. I really appreciate you.
Thank you for having me. And I do just want to make one clarification. As a certified dementia practitioner, I am not someone that is medically certified to diagnose. I think you mentioned diagnosing. So no, that's all right, because sometimes that's confusing,
but not diagnose.
Look, this it's a very vast, roadmap to try to get through. So not diagnosed, but certainly very readily can identify and recognize, and then certainly am trained to work with people living with some level of cognitive decline, and then also support the families in getting an appropriate medical assessment, and then the support that goes beyond the diagnoses.
Awesome. Why don't you tell us a little bit about your background, Tamath, and how you got to opening your own business just 2 years ago? And I know it is like flourishing. You have so many connections. So many people know you. And you're basically doing this prior to even opening your own business.
Yes.
So why don't you tell us a little bit about how that all came about?
So I really recognized, so I've been working with seniors for over 2 decades. And certainly when I was the Director of Senior Services in Southbury, and, I basically supported it was 37% of our population were 60 and over, supported them through a tragic tornado that affected the community for many, many weeks. and also the COVID epidemic. I created a grocery brigade that literally flattened the curve and saved lives in Southbury with a tremendous level of support, certainly, from the administration, but from a vast volunteer network. Many of them were my triathlete friends that were volunteer shoppers. But I was seeing in this municipal agent role, which is basically people need to understand that in their community in the state of Connecticut, every town is mandated, every municipality is mandated to have, they call it a sworn municipal agent. That person acts as a point person for families and seniors, families of seniors and seniors, to be able to reach out when they're facing any kind of challenge or question related to the aging experience. So in that role, you're also mandated to present a report annually on behalf of the town. So I have over 3,500 cases, documented cases, and situations of seniors and families that I assisted. And it could be anything as simple as helping them find a walker to a complex case with protective services for the elderly for a senior at risk in the community. But as these calls are coming in, I'm not a case manager. I'm not a social worker, although I've done a lot of stuff that I'm kind of wonder what if I went into the wrong, line of study years ago. But there was just more and more need, and just throwing a phone number, which basically, the municipal agent provides resources and then kind of walks away. And so many times over and over again, I was hanging up the phone and saying to myself, these people need way more than that. Or this family member sounds maxed out, and I don't know how they're going to get through the rest of the day, let alone try to, continue on with the information that I gave them to try to get that resource in place for, their loved one. Also, we went through it with my mother-in-law. As a certified dementia practitioner and recognizing the situation, you've got family dynamics, everything else. I brought in our own dementia team. As a certified dementia practitioner, I knew that our family would be best served. It's a very big, Italian family. Mom is the center of everything, retired geriatric nurse. And going through that experience, we ended up in an emergent situation in the hospital. In the hospital, that I had many contacts and good colleagues and, quite frankly, friends that worked there. And we were in a situation where, quite frankly, they were looking to cut my mother-in-law loose, bounce her out, discharge her, get her and I see this all the time. They're at their threshold at the hospital. Nothing more than we can do. Yes, we know that the individual has dementia or some form of cognitive decline, diagnosed or undiagnosed, but here, we've got to discharge them. So we found ourselves in that position, and I'm married to a CPA who's had his own firm for 40 plus years, and we have incredible networks between the two of us. He understands the financial and, incredibly, but, here we are in the hospital. I'm looking at him. I'm like, no, this is not acceptable. And I started to advocate, and, even to the point where my brother-in-law started to get uncomfortable and was like, Tamath, we're good. And I said, you've got to just allow me. I mean, this isn't right. But as we walked out of that hospital and as we got, Mom situated, and unfortunately it was in the middle of COVID, and it did end up having to be that she had to go to a secure facility. And that was horrible and heart-wrenching in the middle of COVID, trying to find somewhere where they could provide a secure bed with all the nuances of, isolation and everything else that came with COVID. And I turned to my husband, I said, how does the average person do this? How does the average person do this? And that was really, truly the very start of that seed starting to be planted, where I really recognized that there was such a need. And, I started to put my plan in place for this business, certainly bring a varied background that's a little different than my colleagues who do a remarkable job. I don't just bring into an assisted living or skilled care facility. I don't just bring home health aid workers in. I look at the whole situation. And then on top of it, which we haven't even touched upon, is I am a recognized conservator with the state of Connecticut probate court system, and one step further, fully vetted through the controller's office for the state of Connecticut as a Regulation 16 conservator, which deals more with indigent clients. who can't pay. So I come in, and very frequently I'm coming in to assist a burned out caregiver, which I know you said, is the focus of what we're talking about today. And we're certainly looking forward to getting to that. But very often I'm walking in and saying, there's so much more. The medical piece, you're just so well covered. I mean, look, there's always room for improvement, but people are more and more recognizing that medical piece, and the medical piece is strong. But you bring mom home with a broken hip, and she's got the walker and she's got the home health aid, but who's dealing with the leaky faucet in the kitchen? Who's paying the electric bill, and why is she 3 bills late? Who's managing the lawn care guy that's come in, and now he's bringing in these other people that are charging money, and I'm not really sure, and I'm in California, and mom's telling me all this stuff, and I think she's got cognitive decline, and nothing's making sense. So it's
so vulnerable. You're so vulnerable.
Yeah, absolutely.
You have one person, maybe your spouse passed, and you're so vulnerable, and people are coming to your door, and they're giving them money, and they're doing things that who's in charge? And I do have a question for you, though. The municipal agent, I hadn't actually ever heard of that until I met you.
So all right, so let's do a moment, because I think that is a critical piece of information that all of your viewers should hold in their little resource library. So when we were talking about it off camera before we started, how different New York is from Connecticut. Now, Connecticut is not regionalized like many states. And that is why when you go from municipality to municipality, town to town, it can be very different. And why in the state of Connecticut, you can go town to town and there may not be a senior center. So unlike other states, like the state of Massachusetts does a remarkable job with seniors and, senior focused centers and support. We have our area agencies on aging, which are wonderful, but town to town, we vary so much. So while we're not mandated in Connecticut for municipalities to have senior centers, every single town in the state of Connecticut is mandated to have a sworn municipal agent. So as I said, that person does not have to be a social worker. That person is not a case manager, but very often and it could be a standalone, or it could be folded into another position. Very often it is the town social worker if the town has one. Very often it can be the director of senior services. In some towns, it's a volunteer. In some cases, it's, included in the salary of the worker, or it's a stipend, or it's whatever the case may be. Now,
but only has to do with seniors?
Correct. Senior specific.
Only seniors. Okay.
Senior specific. But that a family member of a senior with a concern for their family member certainly could call.
So would somebody call and ask the municipal agent, like, is there senior housing, senior discount housing?
Yes, absolutely. The people don't realize what a source of information that person is. So yes, anything. You have any kind of concern. So that, again, I talk about my background. Well, I had 7 years of, basically you're building up a Rolodex, right? Of all these contacts, all this knowledge of what is out there. So that when that legislative law was passed in the late 70s, there was funding, there was training, and over the years, obviously, unfortunately, that has gone by the wayside. The one thing that does remain is every municipal agent in every municipality must submit a written report annually of the cases, of the people they helped. Obviously, it's not with names or specifics, but that is why when I come to you and say, documented 3,500 cases just in my tenure at Southbury, that's a documented, that was through the municipal agent piece. And that is what really gave me that vantage point out into the community of what people were really truly struggling with, right? I mean, in a way you were the social worker for the town for aging, because I was not the social worker. I know, but you were kind of like acting like a social worker. Oh, I see what you're saying. Well, yes. I mean,
you were telling them where all the resources were to obtain different parts of what they
and
needed.
we had a social worker. So like I would refer over to our social services when I felt that was an appropriate referral, that she could then take the baton. It all depended on what the situation. I mean, there's no cookie cutter in this at all
Yes,
on any level,
I
not
see
on
that.
that level. Certainly not on the level that I'm working at now. And so, honestly, I felt I had a good idea. I felt I had something that was really going to catch. I also am founder of the Southbury Senior Alliance, which was founded in 2018 by myself and the director of the Jewish Federation, who has since gone on to another position. But Jade Stoltz and I founded the Southbury Senior Alliance, which is the only senior-specific nonprofit in Southbury. We became a nonprofit in 22. So also through that is a group of senior-serving professionals that have a footprint and are serving seniors within Southbury. And it's everything from bankers to pharmacists to financial people to home health aid owners, company owners, whatever the case, facilities, community outreach people from those facilities. And we work on advocation, education, and then also obviously we fundraise for any program that's going to support seniors, whether it be something that's organically created and promoted through our organization or it's somewhere out in the Southbury community. Southbury is a very high, it's 37% of their population is over 60. So it's per capita. So it's the highest per capita in the state of seniors. Well, recently they lost that designation. Somebody eked out, I think by like 0.5%, but it's a big group of seniors and a very highly concentrated, group of seniors. So I took that
village thing going on there.
Oh yeah, Heritage Village was started in the mid 60s, and that's over 2,300 condos, age restricted. So yes, that is, and it was the first one built in the country. So
well, I love the whole idea of the municipal agent. So if people can call up their town and say, "I'd like to talk to the municipal agent on aging," would that be the correct term?
So yeah, what they can do is they can Google or look in a town, municipal directory for municipal agent. If they cannot find it, then they should call their senior center and ask who the municipal agent is and ask for a phone number and or email, and should definitely ask what their hours are, because like I said, in some of the smaller communities, it might just be a part-time position. If there isn't a senior center in the community, then they should be calling their first selectman or mayor's office to find out who the municipal agent is. But that's an incredible resource. People don't know. They just don't know.
Is it advertised anywhere? Like, do you advertise it at senior centers? Like, how do people know about these? That there's such help?
Really, those that are involved in the senior centers. When I was at Southbury, I was the first vice president of our statewide professional organization for several years, and so I had a really good sense of what was going on statewide in different communities with our seniors, and it was a challenge. We did our best as professionals to promote it. But no, there really isn't. Well, look, in the state of Connecticut, we lost our commissioner on aging. There's no longer an aging department in Hartford, which the advocate in me gets all fired up. There is representation, but we've been tucked into the Department of Women and Children. How do you do that with us being one of the largest senior populations in the country? We've lost a seat at the governor's table. Now, that's not to diminish the fact that certainly the Department of Women and Children, their commissioner, part of their role and task is to represent seniors. But why are the seniors splitting up time between two other?
Why are they lumped in?
Two other critical populations.
Well, we don't want to get into politics, so to speak.
No. But that's just kind of the dynamics of it all. Yeah.
That doesn't make sense. It should be the opposite way, right? We're going.
It is where we are. So you've got to know how to navigate through what we have, right? So I can't say enough about people reaching out to their municipal agent and utilizing that. It comes to you at no cost. It's there for you as a resident of the state. But I would encourage, call the one in your town. Don't, if you live in Norwalk, yeah, if you live in Norwalk, don't call the Southbury municipal agent. You know what I mean?
Call
Call the
one in
one
your
in
town. Absolutely.
right.
Now, I know you have a lot of experience too with caregivers and the burnout and how to avoid it and everything, especially people caring for people with dementia and Alzheimer's. You've had your own experience, but you've had a lot of other experience. So, can you tell us a little bit about like some tips that you would give to somebody that is home with their loved one who has dementia, Alzheimer's, Parkinson's, and they're exhausted because, you know, their family member might be in a loop. They need constant attention. They can't be left alone. It's exhausting. They're not really having a true conversation with them. So what can they do to avoid this?
Well, I think what I always stress with my clients is that while it's admirable, it's natural to want to not leave that person, to make sure you're overseeing, make sure you're in control of the situation, because what if I leave and something happens? And that
Right.
that's wonderful, but the bottom line is, if you're not taking care of yourself, the whole situation falls apart. And I find that I have to repeat, that's a continuous loop with my clients, because they can hear it once and go, uh-huh. And then I'm having to say it again to them, remind them of it again 2 days later. I mean, I have a sibling right now, and I probably say it to her 3 times in each meeting. Don't forget, if you're not taking, and she had a sinus infection. Oh my gosh, I've got to go see my sister. But no, you need to rest. You need to rest. It's what your sister ultimately is going to want. So what I encourage is that they really should be seeking out some way to take time. Now, sometimes I understand that maybe there's a financial component, but just hiring somebody isn't the only option. Look around you. Do you have a sibling? Do you have a close friend? Do you have a neighbor that you trust? I think it's very, very important that people around you tend to forget the struggles that you're dealing with. And human nature is, people love to just be asked. Sometimes it's not even anything they would even think about. But
Mhm.
who doesn't love to be asked to help? There's nothing
Mhm.
more rewarding or self-fulfilling than helping. So
Mhm.
don't look at it as a burden. Look at it as possibly giving an opportunity for somebody to feel good about themselves, to give you an hour to go out on the patio and read a book, an
Even
hour to
their
go get your haircut,
even
an
their
hour to
their
go do your banking.
right. They can even contact their church. They might have some
Exactly.
volunteers. They can contact
Exactly. Exactly.
senior center might have volunteers. Um,
There's now, with COVID, being behind us, there are more and more visiting programs. A lot of churches do volunteer visitor programs. The other thing I would recommend is reach out to your area agency on aging, because a
mm,
lot of times they have different programs. So the state of Connecticut is divided into different regions, and in each region, that area agency on aging is a wealth of support and resources. So it might take a little bit of time on the phone, but before your area agency on aging, before that, call your municipal agent. That
and
municipal
ask.
agent is a great place to start.
So you're
So
saying give yourself time, take time out, and
you
do some things
have to
that
take
would
that
refresh
time
you.
out. Have
Yeah.
to take that time out. There's also incredible support groups throughout the state, both live and via Zoom. So,
And where do you find those?
the
Where can you find
Alzheimer's Association has all kinds of different support groups throughout the state, both live and via Zoom, so that you can always reach out to them. They have a support hotline that you could call if you're not somebody who goes online, or
them?
is having difficulty. The other thing is if you have a skilled nursing facility in your community, the social workers there are remarkable. You know, I wouldn't rule out. I mean, I know of several that would take a call from a community member in a second and say, because some of these places do support systems, do support groups themselves. for them, it's part of their community outreach. So that's always a possibility as well,
I
and
think
that
people,
allows.
yeah, I think people don't realize. So I work with a lot of spouses. I have
Mhm.
spouses that come to our senior home with memory care issues. And Tamath, exactly what you're saying. It's like the guilt, of leaving them alone. So it's their spouse and they have Alzheimer's and they don't want to leave them alone and they don't want anybody else to, come, and that they're so burned out. And I don't even think they realize, like, there are visiting doctors. Like, if you can't get your husband or wife to a doctor, there are doctors that will come visit, and visiting nurses and different people that are covered by your Medicare. So
Exactly.
there are people that can help that are just in the medical profession. If you haven't been able to get your spouse out for years, this is a story I hear a lot. But I think you're dealing with a lot of the guilt of leaving somebody, and
Oh, absolutely.
you can't have
Well,
the
and the other
guilt
thing
because
too is
you need.
if you're in for a regular doctor's appointment, speak to your doctor. Let your doctor know what's going on, because that's the other thing is a lot of times in these situations, when I'm coming in, the primary care doctor has no clue what's going on. And why would, I mean, it's like anything else. If you're not sharing that with your
Exactly.
doctor's not going to know. And you know what? I'm sorry, a caregiver that is at that level of intensity round the
Mhm.
clock requires, in my opinion, requires some TLC and special medical attention. That
Mhm.
doctor's got to be in tune that their patient is carrying that level of stress, whether that individual is a spouse who is 75, 80, 85, or if that caretaker is an adult child who's 30 or 40, or because we talk about the spouses, but let me tell you something. The statistics of the adult children that are
Mm.
caring for their parents, that are working, that are chasing their younger kids around and trying to get to
A lot.
practices, it's horrific. It's
Yeah.
horrific. And I spend a lot of time just sitting and listening and watching people fall apart, consoling, encouraging, and then starting to try to rebuild them to understand it. There are options for relief, and there are ways for relief. And sometimes it starts with just recognizing they got to let go just a little bit, and it's okay. Nobody's judging you. Nobody's judging you.
I think
It's
they're judging themselves,
all the
actually.
time,
They
all the time.
they have to let up the guilt. It's kind of like on the, when you go on a plane and they're like, put the mask on yourself before you put it on your child. It's the same thing.
Exactly.
I had in my home a young man in his early 60s with early onset dementia from a traumatic brain injury, and his sister, who had no children, was caring for her, or was not married either, caring for her mother who was in her 90s with dementia for like 10 years. So she moved in with her mom, cared for her for 10 years. And in her off time, she'd hire somebody just weekly to come see her brother with dementia. And she would come and she would cry because her brother's, in her 60s. She was in her 60s. And then she'd go home. And I'm like, you need to do something for yourself. Like, this can't be your life. Like, coming to see your brother with dementia, your mother with dementia. Like, you're awesome and responsible and loving, but what are you doing? And she was just always exhausted
Oh,
and always
absolutely.
crying. And I'm like, yeah, somebody
Well,
needs to take
and
over.
there are respite programs that are available, and so our area agencies on aging are a wonderful resource to contact and ask about that. And it's always ever evolving, so I wouldn't, I'll call and say, okay, what's currently, because with funding changes and that sort of thing, it's ever evolving. But the area agency on aging is a wonderful place to reach out regarding respite programs. And the other thing too to remember is, if the senior who's being cared for is a veteran, there's a whole host of opportunities and resources available as well. So people need to recognize that if they do have a senior who's a veteran, that they need to make sure they're vocalizing that, because that will open up
So
different opportunities and doors.
should they call their local VA to find out that information?
They can. They
Or
can.
better,
Or oh my God, I'd have to look it up, but there is they should call their area agency on aging and mention that they are a veteran. There is
aid in
it's very
attendance.
there is a service that will help you in determining I'd have to look it up. It's in my resources, and I reach out. So you can call the VA. The problem is as with everything these days, is that they're so understaffed. So that could almost create another stress for the family member. That's one of the things that I do too, is I tell people, it's not cookie cutter. I have all different types of things that come to me. And very often, I do get families who are just burnt out, caregivers that are burnt out. So one of the things, and I have a promotional director that handles all the promotion for my business now. And so I have an Instagram and a Facebook page. I have a website. But the one thing that I'm always promoting to people is just call me. Nobody expects you to know what to ask. You don't have to be like, oh my God, that's another stress. I got to come up with this. If you're feeling overwhelmed, that's all you, if it's just that, call me. I know the questions.
You don't know what you don't know. You don't know
exactly.
What you don't know.
And I'm going to start asking you questions, and it's like an onion. We peel away the layers and we talk about what's going on. And in my business, my intake, the first intake is free of charge. And it may be half an hour, it may be an hour, it may be 2 hours, whatever it takes to get it done. We do that. And I have had situations where I've said, what you really need is this, and this. If you have any issues, let me know. You're not quite ready for supporting our seniors on a larger level than provide. I mean, that nothing makes me feel better than at least having them walk off with some resources. In other situations, I'm coming in temporarily for them to just get everything in order for them, get some kind of a structure set up where they are getting that relief, that they're not overwhelmed. Because look, just trying to reach out to the resources and put them in place is such a stress. I got to go to work. The kids have baseball practice, or I'm caring for my wife, but my knee's been giving me grief, and I'm worried I'm going to need knee surgery. I've got to go see the ortho. I've got doctor's appointments. I mean, it's a mess. And one of the things that I say over and over again, it's kind of it's a normal Tamathism, is I'll look at a client and I'll say, you've got a hall pass. I'm telling you right now, you've got a hall pass on whatever the situation is. You've got to understand that I think that what happens is they start to turn inward, and caregivers put more and more pressure. They worry about what the outside people are thinking, if they're even alert and not totally exhausted. They're worrying about, this is really.
Resentment can set in if you're one of like 4 kids and you're the only kid with all the responsibility. And your siblings are like, well, I'll send money, or I'll come visit, once a year, twice a year. And, there's no relief. So then you have the resentment of like, I'm the only good kid or whatever, like,
the family dynamics, right? I mean, we all have them. And one of the things that I'm a big proponent for, one of the things I really, really feel strongly about is, in this day and age of Zoom and everything, I much prefer an in-person with potential clients. Not to say I do tons of Zooms, but an in-person. And what I tell them is when they get in those dynamics and they get all wiggly and nervous, and I don't know if there's something to be said to bring in that third party. Because what I'm going to do now is I sit the whole family down, because you know what? They're talking, but they're not communicating. And I don't know what you're feeling, and we don't know what he's feeling, and we don't know what anxiety's mom's dealing with now with this diagnosis. So it enables the conversation and the communication to start in a non-threatening, safe environment where everyone can feel comfortable, because I'm the one asking you, tell me, while everyone can listen. And sometimes it turns a situation. I mean, I've literally had siblings who thought they were contributing, being resented by the other one, and then saying, oh my God, well, if that's all you needed, I didn't realize that's what you needed. Because like I said, they're talking, but they're not communicating. And it's just human nature. And so to bring in that fresh set and somebody who's got the experience and kind of the knowledge of how to handle that type of a situation. It's a very big piece of what I do, because that caregiver burnout is just, it permeates like a poison. And really, really.
Like you could be a sounding board and a third party for family members too, because I will often have family members that there could be 3 siblings, and 2 of them want to send their mom like to a home, and the other one is like, no, like we're just keeping her home. She's fine, and she's not fine. Like, so just having somebody identify. Often people don't understand what like Alzheimer's or dementia is, and they think their parent was fine yesterday, and today she's just like forgot things.
Oh, it happens. Well, it happens all the time, and that's where we talk about being a certified dementia practitioner, having the training and the knowledge. I mean, how many situations I walked into, mom's fine, she's driving.
Okay, you're like, she's away. She shouldn't be.
Right. But back to, like the whole family dynamics. I had one case where, very sad, barely 60, early onset, and very successful teacher, had to retire, and really struggling with the whole diagnoses. There were horrendous dynamics between the husband and the children. And, it's easy when you're coming in as the third party to kind of look at this situation. They're literally fighting over her, fighting over who knows best. And, kids won't sit in the same room with husband, and it was a mess. And I ultimately, everybody's heart was in the right place. Everybody's heart was in the right place, but no one asked mom. So with her husband sitting there, he's like, well, I'm traveling for work. And I said, stop just for a minute. And I turned to the wife and I said, how are you feeling about all of this? And I just asked one question. It just all came tumbling out. And the husband just sat there like, and even with all of that, again, heart in the right place, strong opinion, XYZ needs to happen. And I looked at him and I said, that's not what she said. Are you, at the end of the day, we're still all here for her.
Yeah.
For her. And one of the pieces of what I do, and a very big philosophy of mine, is that as you go through the aging, and I love to say experience, because that's what it is. It has ups and downs. It is a process, but it's an experience. Mm-hmm. And it should be in some lights, I think it should be positive, the answer isn't just to lock and box and lock it up and throw the key away. I believe that seniors need to be allowed to be independent and autonomous and thriving. And the best place for that to happen is at home. And there are ways that can be extended safely, but there also needs to be the experience and expertise to know when to say, this isn't sustainable, this isn't safe, and we need to move to the next step. And the transition piece is something that I have great experience with, that, just in the last month, I have had huge transitions with 2 clients, clearing out their homes, listing them, trying to make sure that all the memories, nothing gets thrown out. Like, I'm very, very hands-on in how I do things, but, that's really important. And a lot of times that's where the fear comes in with the individual. That's the focus of the case is, they want to be able to continue as independently as they can. And sometimes it's a situation where, mom's memory is slipping a little bit. It's not necessarily, a true dementia level yet, but she really needs help with her bills. Well, she doesn't want her son and daughter in her finances. You can't blame her, so support her in a way where there's someone else doing that that's going to maintain that confidentiality. But you know what? I'm also going to be keeping an eye on mom and know when to call the son and daughter to say, listen, I think it's time that mom needs to go to whatever doctor or, whatever's going on. But the caregiver burnout is real. It's real. And it's a true struggle. And caregivers have to understand what a critical role they play. And as a result, they must take the time. They have to take the time. Without them, this entire situation falls apart. It falls apart. And they don't want that. And that's sometimes when I'm really having a hard time with a caregiver, and I shouldn't say hard time, a challenge in helping them recognize the importance of taking care of themselves. I'll lay out a scenario, what happens? What happens if, you're exhausted, and it doesn't have to be, well, I'm too young. I would never have a heart attack okay. So what happens when you're so exhausted, you're racing out the door to put the kids on the school bus, which you're running late for, to go get to mom to give her breakfast, and you've got your cup of coffee, you're struggling with your son's backpack, and you misjudge that step out of the front door and you break your leg. Then what? And so, in starting to take that hall pass, give yourself some time and figure out options to get that little bit of breath also opens the doors that if God forbid something critical happens, you've already kind of started, to create a situation where it isn't always you. Sometimes that's not realistic if an emergency happens. So
it's kind of like when you had little kids thinking you were the only one that could do anything for them. So you just became like everything for them, which
all consuming, right? Mm-hmm.
All consuming, but you forgot about the rest of your life and your husband and all your well-being and everything. So I mean, it's the same kind of idea, because I see people that have gone to their sleep over their mom's house, they have a family, but they're taking the night shift. So they go over after dinner and they're sleeping over and go to work in the morning exhausted because they need a night shift, and I'm like, that is not a great solution for your family. Like for anybody. I know it's
down. Yeah. And take it a step further. What happens when that loved one is gone and you've spent 5 years or a decade? Then you come out of it and you have a life too. That's okay. Of course you have a life too. And now, never mind that you've lost that time, but now I have seen so many caregivers come out of that intense caregiver situation with all kinds of burnout, and they've come out on the other end of it, and they're like war prisoners. They're completely lost, deer in the headlights. Like, how am I rebuilding? How am I rebuilding my life? How am I reconnecting with the friends and the people I loved? How am I reconnecting with what brings me joy? Like, that's when they're taking time for themselves. They're not losing all of that. They're not, they're not totally shutting themselves out from the world. And that's, I think, having moments of joy is important, really, really important to carry you through. I mean, in life it is, isn't it? So why wouldn't it be in a high intensity caregiver situation?
And I think Tamath, just like saying, give yourself a hall pass. I mean, my mother-in-law also had dementia, and she came when she was going to be thrown out of her independent living place near us. We brought her home so they wouldn't throw her out, because she was, pulling down the fire bell stations and roaming and on the Merritt Parkway kind of thing. And so we brought her home. We didn't want her to throw her out because we didn't have another place for her to go yet. So we were like, oh my gosh. So she came to our home, but it was a nightmare after a few days. I mean, it was just, she was up in the middle of the night, breaking things all night. I had little kids. She was wandering. I went to the supermarket with her, and within 5 minutes, she was having like some guy with a pickup truck drive her to our house and didn't remember where we lived. And I'm like, where did you go? You're walking down the aisle with me in the supermarket. Like, now we're looking for her. So it was very tough after just a few days. So you don't feel bad if that's your parent doesn't want you to ruin your life to help them. They want you to help them, but they wouldn't be like, you know what, if I get dementia, just ruin your life and help me. No, they're going to be like, if I get dementia, please help me. But remember, you have a life. Like if they were aware enough, that is what they'd be telling you, right?
Absolutely.
To ruin their life for them. So you've given such great advice on caregiver burnout, from basically taking the time, not feeling the guilt, giving yourself a hall pass, calling your agency on aging, calling the Veteran Association, calling your local churches, calling in friends and family, letting everybody know your situation. We don't know each other.
Agent. Mm-hmm.
Well, your municipal agent that we all just learned about. If you didn't already know about that, like me, call just and let your friends and family know what you're going through, because they're not aware if you're not telling them. And it's not complaining, you're reaching out for help. And like you said, people love to help. They don't know how. Just like if you got sick or had cancer and people want to help you, but they don't know how. So we have to tell people how they can help us by lending a some spare time so we could go out, or maybe cooking a meal for us so we don't have to do it. Whatever it is, sending a cleaning service to the home so we're not always burdened with everything. Just whatever it may be, but you need to reach out and just not think that you're the only one in the world that has to deal with this, and just exhaust yourself, because
being vulnerable is not easy for anyone. People are not comfortable being vulnerable, but if you just let that curtain, pull that curtain back, let that wall down just enough, and be just vulnerable enough to say, oh, nothing would mean more to me if you could just come sit with my mom for an hour so I could go run to the post office.
Even your neighbors,
Mm-hmm.
you have to get to know your neighbors, and be there for them, and they'll be there for you. Like you just
one of my actually my first ever conserved client, who has, unfortunately, it was obviously a process, but she ended up she is in a facility now. But when I first met her, she was in Heritage Village, and she was living with a companion. It's a long, very, very, very sad story. But he essentially had taken her in. She had been bilked out of her condo in a Ponzi scheme committed by her son, which was awful. And so she had this very new companion. They'd only been dating a few months when he took her in. And I was so proud of him because, again, strong man, he was a retired New York City police captain. So, he was vulnerable enough to let his neighbors know what was going on. So when she did leave, when he was using the room, the neighbors had such an incredible network that had an eye out for her. And rather than drag her back home, sit her down, give her a cup of tea, call him, she's with us, all's good. And you know what essentially ended up happening is this network of people in the surrounding condos had an eye out for her. But over time, and with my encouragement, he learned when that happened, don't go rushing over there. Take the moment. They've got her. They've told you they've got her. They're good. And they felt so good to be able to provide that. And so there's a case in point of him just ever so slightly saying, she runs out. I use the ladies' room, and use the men's room, and she's racing out. And they had an eye on her, and they would keep her. And so he was actually starting to grasp these moments of respite that, his neighbors were carrying that burden for a little bit for him. So,
but also what he did unwittingly, Tamath, is he created like a neighborhood watch for each other.
Exactly.
So even not after his girlfriend, they now had that whole neighborhood watch, so to speak, for each other for every other reason. Yeah. So it wasn't just about him. Like he created something bigger and unwittingly.
They still stop me. Like I'll go, Tamath, why are you here? Is everything okay? It's really remarkable. Human nature is an incredible thing. And you just have to be vulnerable enough to ask, because like I said, we're all, we're all busy, right? Who isn't busy these days? Who doesn't have a million things going on? So it's very easy. It's not done with any level of intention, but it's very easy to forget, oh, my best friend's, got a mom with dementia and she's struggling to, it's just human nature. But she picks up the phone and calls me and says, I just need to get out of the house for 10 minutes.
You'll
Well,
be
of
there.
course, let me come and help you, So I think that's a big, big piece. And,
Well,
and
thank
letting
you so
yourself
much.
do
Thank you so much for giving everybody the permission, which is what they need. We
that.
need permission.
Yes.
We need somebody else to tell us that it's okay to take care of ourselves.
Right.
And oftentimes we don't think that, and we become like kind of martyrs unwittingly. So it's nice that somebody else gives us the permission. And Tamath, I just want to thank you. We could talk for hours because
I know we couldn't we? Absolutely.
My gosh, you are a wealth of information about everything to do with seniors. And you just from the political side of it to the veterans, to the support, to the financial, to your paralegals, or everything to do with the wills, the trust. We didn't even get into all that.
No.
But I think anybody would be well served calling you if you have any problems with
thank you. Yeah.
And I don't want to say problems. If if you're struggling with
call. I mean, you have questions. I always encourage, just call. It's nothing ventured, nothing gained. And, all it is a little bit of time to figure out, what's going on. And very often, like I said, people call and they're just at a loss. And I can kind of get down to the root of what's going on and how to best move forward for them. So, and I love doing it.
I could see that this is a business from your heart, that you started it. You're basically doing this business before you were doing this business for everybody. So I can really see this is just your calling, and
it definitely is. Yeah. Thank you. Thank you.
Love it. So Tamath Rossi, supporting our seniors. You want to get in touch with Tamath, it's 203-910-5998. And she is happy to talk to you. And don't even feel bad if you just have a few questions. Or if you have tons of questions, or if you need tons
exactly.
You might start out thinking you have one question, embarrassed that you have 100, but don't be embarrassed because Tamath is here to help. She has 100 answers. That's all I know about you already. You have 100 answers to any question anybody will ask. So thank you so much again, Tamath, and I know our paths will cross again soon.
Yes, definitely. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you. You're welcome. Wow. She is a powerhouse at Tamath. She is a wealth of information about everything. I mean, she's worked as a paralegal. She has worked in the government. She's worked with agency on aging. She's always there for seniors. And you could see that as just where her love lies. So please give her a call. Sometimes lawyers, you feel weird about calling them because to ask them a question, they might want to bill you. She's not like that. Tamath truly wants to help. You have some simple questions. If she can help you answer them, she's going to be so happy to do that. If you have more complicated things, she's happy to help you. So please give her a call at 203-910-5998. And thank you so much for coming and joining our show today. I really appreciate all the support you've given me at Just Like Home. And I will see you next time. Thank you.